Hello everyone and welcome to News Tonight. I'm Rhoda Ngonzi. Let's get started. President Yoweri Museveni has called upon lawyers to work hard for the prosperity of East Africans through integration. The president made the remarks at the East African Law Society's 22nd annual conference at the Imperial Resort Beach Hotel in Entebbe. The conference ran under the theme Future-Proofing of the Legal Professional in East Africa. Now, the East African Law Society is the regional bar association of East Africa formed in 1995 and incorporated in Tanzania. It has over 10,000 individual members and also has 6 national bar examinations as members, namely the Uganda Law Society, the Law Society of Kenya, the Tanzania Law Society, Zanzibar, Kigali Bar Association and Burundi Bar Association.
The East African Law Society is the regional bar association of 10,000 individual members and also has 6 national bar associations as members, namely the Uganda Law Society, the Law Society of Kenya, the Tanzanian Law Society, Zanzibar, Kigali Bar Association and Burundi Bar Association. President Museveni, in his speech, said that East Africa would not become sustainably prosperous if the intelligentsia of Africa, who focus their time on small issues, ignore talk about its integration.
Intelligentsia of Africa discuss about all things on earth except themselves. They know what is happening on the North Pole, what is happening on the South Pole, what is the new song in California. But they never talk about their own future.
The President said that if the lawyers promoted the integration of East Africa, they would have freedom to operate in the whole of East Africa, thus improving their chances of being prosperous.
So it should be clear to the intelligentsia, to the youth, that the prosperity we are talking about is prosperity through production, not through begging, not through parasiting, not through mysticism.
He added that the integration of East African countries would not only guarantee economic prosperity but also ensure security from colonialism in the future. President Museveni explained that when Africa was colonized by the whites, freedom fighters on the continent set out to achieve 5 strategic goals, namely independence, democracy, prosperity, political integration, and protection of their independence through anti-colonial movements.
Among your high learning include the realization that in order for us to be prosperous, we must work for economic integration of East Africa and Africa. So that your legalism is not barren, is not ngumba.
The president called upon media, religious leaders and other leaders in society to educate people about the strategic security of an integrated East Africa, citing that it would create a large market for their goods and insure them from colonialism, which has made the black race feel inferior to other races. The president therefore urged lawyers to promote law around issues of survival of Africa in this modern world era.
Meaning that you are now discovering that this fragmentation of the services market in East Africa is injurious to your prosperity. Because you are stuck. You can only take on cases for Ugandans. I think that's what it means. Or you are not allowed to go to Kenya and pursue a case there. because Kenya is another market, Uganda is another market. The market is fragmented. And yet, if you had freedom to operate in the whole market, your chances of prosperity would be better.
During the conference, President Museveni also launched the African Support Fund, which is aimed at building legal capacity among East African countries and also train lawyers to address challenges facing East African countries, such as investment agreements, private-public partnerships, large investment projects, and natural resources. The Attorney General of Uganda, William Byarhanga, commended President Museveni for his promotion of rule of law and urged him to use his position as chairperson of the East African community to elevate the rule of law in other East African countries. Mr. Richard Mugisha, the president of the East African Law Society, said the Regional Bar Association is committed to contributing its quota towards the integration of East Africa. UBC TV, Harriet Nambi.
President Yoweri Museveni has urged all Ugandans, especially members of parliament, whose mandate is derived from the democratic principles that were brought about by the sacrifices of movement freedom fighters, to respect the will of Ugandans and exercise their legislative power peacefully, honorably, without intimidating or infringing on the right and freedoms of other individuals. Addressing a public rally yesterday at Karambi Sub-County headquarters of Burasha County, Kabarole District, President Museveni said that the NRA freedom fighters shed blood to bring about democracy and guarantee people's freedoms. He therefore wondered why some people, especially those in leadership echelons, are using intimidation instead of democratically and peacefully discussing all matters of national importance. The president urged those in leadership positions, especially the MPs, to lead by example and use democratic language to forge national unity, adding that that was the reason why the freedom fighters went to the bush and restored the legislative arm of government in 1989. Now, client experts who support doctors in counseling HIV patients in government hospitals have laid down their tools, joining the striking medical doctors. The head of HIV client experts, Millie Katana, pointed out that they cannot execute their work in the absence of doctors. Katana was addressing the media at the headquarters of the National Forum of People Living with HIV and AIDS networks in Uganda.
Expert patients who provide counseling services to our friends living with HIV and work alongside healthcare workers have, with immediate effect, decided to withdraw our services. The tipping point is because for the last 2 weeks, doctors have not showed up to work, and therefore our friends have not been attended to, and we cannot work without the doctors. In healthcare delivery, work goes on as teams. So without the team leader, who is the medical officer, who is the doctor, no work can be done. Therefore, it's a waste of resources on our part to continue going to the health facilities to see the misery of our friends living with HIV when we cannot do anything. So with immediate effect, we are also withdrawing our services. This is a national crisis. It's a security issue. The Speaker of Parliament should recall the members from the holiday so that they discuss this matter, because as far as HIV is concerned, every day that a person living with HIV misses their medication, we are precipitating drug-resistant strains of HIV, which will be 1,000 times more costly to treat once these patients get into drug resistance.
Relatedly, striking doctors have been faulted for lack of nationalism since they have neglected patients, forgetting the Hippocratic oath that guides their work. The special presidential advisor in charge of residence district commissioners in the office of the president, Haji Mohammed Sadiq Mayanja, has observed while presiding the 4th pass-out patriotism course for Mulago School of Nursing and Midwifery in Kampala. Let's take a look.
Those are iron answers.
The doctors' strike in the second week has not attracted little attention as they demand unbudgeted emoluments from government. In all government hospitals, patients suffer, with others dying due to absence of doctors to handle complex cases, yet with no treatment, and this also resulting into deaths. The presidential advisor in charge of resident district commissioners in the office of the president, Haji Mohammed Sadiq Mayanja, attributes this to lack of patriotism.
The objective was to instill core values of patriotism, that is love and sacrifice of their nation in these younger people, so that we prepare them to take the mantle of service.
He was passing out the 4th patriotism course from Lagos School of Nursing and Midwifery, where 240 students completed a 1-week patriotism course. Mayanja noted that such a course is crucial for all upcoming cadres because it focuses on challenges and situations. Mayanja, who also is the chairperson governing Council of Lagos School of Nursing and Midwifery, called for the striking doctors to revoke their industrial action and return to work.
That whereas their demands may be genuine, but the need to serve humankind is paramount as negotiations take place between them and the government to address their demands and challenges.
The acting principal of the school, Nampi Jakakonge, says the training will empower nurses and midwives to offer diligent services.
And as they render the services to the patient, they need to have the ethics within them and be in position to be exemplary and to provide the best service as nurses.
Banonya Cosmos and Henry Muganga reporting in Kampala.
Thank you, Cosmos. Now, another member of parliament from the opposition has today returned the 29 million shillings given to them for consultation on the constitutional amendment of the presidential age limit. Dokolo District Woman MP Cecilia Ogwal becomes the 12th member from the opposition to return the money following a request from her constituents. We have that story.
With our 30 million or 29 million, we are returning what they want to do with it. And that is the only matter which has brought us here this afternoon.
In October this year, Parliament released 13 billion shillings to members of Parliament to go to their respective constituencies and consult voters on amending Article 102B of the Constitution on lifting the presidential age limit. Out of the 13 billion, each member of Parliament was given 29 million for consultations. However, the exercise has been filled with withdrawals and returns of the money to the Parliamentary Commission by some members of Parliament who opposed the constitutional amendment.
Packaged by the bank, 10 million, 20 million, 25, and 4 million. So that is 29.
While returning the money to the Parliamentary Commission, Dokolo woman member of Parliament Cecilia Ogwal told the press that she is abiding to what her constituents demand.
I have to abide by the verdict. So I'm coming here in compliance with what I have been told to do.
Honorable Cecilia says that this is also part of her spiritual decision to return the money.
I feel in my spirit that this money should not be held in my account or be used in my constituency because there has been a lot of controversy around the lifting of the the age limit you have seen all around the country.
She rubbishes claims that donors gave opposition members of parliament 3 billion shillings through the office of the leader of opposition to oppose the constitutional amendment.
If there is any money which has been ring-fenced for the opposition and came through the commission, then you can only ask the clerk of parliament to find out whether any money, the 3 billion shilling, came for the opposition and whether it actually went to the account of the opposition or is still being held somewhere.
Several sections of members of parliament have been returning the 29 million with claims that it's a misallocation of taxpayers' money meant to fund other sectors. Susan Naonga reporting.
Thank you, Susan. Let's take a short break and return with more details. This is News Tonight. Welcome back and thank you for sticking with us. Uganda needs to increase support to medical workers training institutions in order to improve on the quality and number of professionals. According to administrators and governors of Mengo Hospital that runs 2 training institutions, government support is required to balance the patient to nurses ratio. The Minister for Education and Sports, Janet Kataha Museveni, has commended them for supplementing on government efforts in training medical professionals.
Uganda has 60,000 nurses serving a population of about 40 million people. This represents a nurse-patient ratio of 0.06 to 1,000 against the World Health Organization's recommended ratio of 2.5 to 1,000. This patient-to-nurse ratio puts patients and nurses at risk of emotional exhaustion and stress, thereby compromising patient safety. The Minister for Education and Sports, Janet Kataha Museveni, has commended Mengo Hospital for supplementing government in training medical professionals to address this problem. Her message was read by Minister for General Duties, Mary Karoro Krut.
Our role as a ministry is to ensure standards are upheld in the delivery of effective and efficient quality education in the schools and institutions. I therefore applaud you for offering a wholesome education to our children.
The hospital owns 2 training institutions, Mengo School of Nursing and Midwifery and the Mengo School of Laboratory Technology. The 2 have passed out over 300 nurses, midwives and lab technicians with the certificates and diplomas.
I thank my tutors, the administration, everyone. I can't mention everyone, but I'm really so grateful.
Nurses trained in Mengo Hospital Training School have excelled and distinguished themselves in their professional service to their employers and clients.
This is a total of 367 health workers that are going to be released as a very skilled workforce.
It has also reached an understanding with Uganda Christian University Mukono to become a teaching hospital to offer medical training for degree courses.
And we have already signed a memorandum of understanding with Uganda Christian University to become a teaching hospital for training of medical doctors and dentists.
The hospital administration has also asked government to support them in training medical professionals. The Mengo School of Nursing and Midwifery was the first medical training institution to be established in East Africa by Dr. Catherine Cook in the year 1919. Samuel Garandi, UBC News.
And stakeholders in the health sector are concerned about the persistent poor nutrition that has an adverse effect on both social and economic development of individuals. They cited knowledge gap on nutrition practices among frontline health providers in the East African communities.
Recent regional capacity assessment findings conducted by Helen Keller International indicate that absence of relevant competencies on nutrition at frontline health workers is one of the barriers to scaling up nutrition interventions in East Africa. Nutrition status and its impact vary among the three core economies of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. In Kenya, findings show that 26% of children under 5 years are stunted, 4% wasted, and 11% underweight. In Tanzania, findings of 2016 show that 1 in 3 children under 5 are stunted, wasting, which signifies acute malnutrition, is at 5%. 14% of children are underweight, results while 58% and 45% of children and women respectively are anemic. In Uganda, stunting is at 29% in under 5 years, underweight is 11%, wasting is 4%, anemia among women of reproductive age is at 32%. Ministry of Health has introduced a regional pre-service model curriculum package to build knowledge, skills and competencies among frontline health workers at facilities to improve the nutrition practices in the community.
All of you are aware that Uganda had made some strides in improvement of the indicators in which there has been a reduction of stunting from 33% to 29% and underweight from 14% to 11% and wasting from 5% to 4% among the children under 5 years. So this has been one of the remarkable achievements. But as a country, definitely we know that the challenge still remains because of the high population, because you definitely find that there is high population and there's still a very big prevalence of anemia in children standing at 32% and in women at 53% respectively.
Launching the regional pre-service model curriculum for frontline workers, the Director of Clinical Services in Ministry of Health, Dr. Charles Olara, said the new approach will scale up quality nutrition interventions as recommended by World Health Organization. Dr. Olara further added that Uganda is the 4th country in Africa piloting the idea after Ethiopia, Kenya, and South Africa. The manager non-communicable diseases, food security and nutrition based in Tanzania, Rosemary Muyesaka, cited a need to develop a framework for monitoring and evaluating nutrition practices towards set targets in the community.
Okay, for us as EXA, which is East, Central and Southern Africa Health Community, a regional intergovernmental organization based in Arusha, but supporting 9 countries, of which Uganda is one amongst those. We have developed the pre-service model curriculum to address the gaps in terms of knowledge and competency, as well as the in-service nutrition training packages for health facility-based workers as well as community-based workers, but looking at the key nutrition knowledge as well as competencies to capacitate these frontline workers to deliver the services effectively.
While Uganda has shown significant success in increasing maternal and child anemia from 2001 to 2011, the anemia prevalence among women of reproductive age remains high at 24%. Samuel Narwala compiled this report.
Equal Opportunities Commission has called on striking doctors to exercise patience, saying it already proposed harmonization of salaries of public servants across the board. The Commission chairperson, Sylvia Nabatanzi, says disparities in salaries among government workers are a cancer government is committed to treat in the next financial year. This was during a validation workshop of a draft report on national laws and their compliance with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
According to the findings of the report that was assessing select national laws and their compliance with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, most national laws have provisions that are discriminatory in nature. Some of the laws with questionable provisions are the Marriage and Divorce Act that highlights mental illness as a ground for divorce and the Health Insurance Bill that considers catering for government workers first before the informal sector.
We rightly say that a person of unsound mind cannot stand for an office. That utterance itself, that word itself, is discriminatory by nature. So we thought that we have to get better words. Physically disabled, words that do not discriminate these people or put them away from the entire nation in terms of employment, in terms of their rights.
These and other provisions are the reason for the Commission's research and validation of select national laws process on the advice of the international conventions.
We came up with a report, and we want the different institutions that work on persons with disabilities to validate this report and to give us more information, but also to give us recommendations on how these laws can be amended in case we need an amendment, or how we can make policies in order to respect the rights of persons with disability.
However, commenting on the ongoing doctors' strike, the chairperson Equal Opportunities Commission, Misha Sylvia Nabatanzi Muebwa, appreciated the fact that there are disparities in salaries among government workers, especially in various agencies. Misha Muebwa, however, was quick to call for patience, saying government will soon swing in action to correct the mistake.
That government should harmonize all the salaries of the public servants. So I understand they are reviewing, and I only call upon all ministries, departments and agencies to be patient so that this structure is out, and then I know the Ministry of Finance will act on the structure. It might not be this financial year because the budget is already out, but maybe by next financial year, depending on what they will decide. I think they will incorporate the new structure, and most of these issues will be solved.
Mid this year, the Equal Opportunities Commission launched a salary disparities report which presented recommendations aimed at harmonizing salaries of all public servants. Dorcas Kimono, UBC News.
Sexual immorality is one of the reasons that has diverted students from focusing on education. State Minister for Higher Education, John Chrysostom Muyingo, has said most students are dropping out of school after getting infected with HIV and AIDS. He was addressing students in Kampala during the International Day for Students. Let's take a look.
The development of every nation is rated against the number of literate persons, but in Uganda, many students fail to complete the school cycle and drop out. One of the emerging causes is sexual immorality and modernization that have also led to a decrease in school-going children. Only 6% of the total number of students meant to be in higher institutions of learning are studying, which is a flaw to the education sector.
Not only the parents, not only the grown-ups, you have a part to play. Especially now that those are your peers. Some have dropped out of school.
State Minister for Higher Education, John Chrysostom Muyingo, says the vice of sexual immorality has gravely affected students.
Particularly in ensuring that you stay in school, do everything to make sure that you don't go out of school, don't go out of the university before you complete. Ensure that you are healthy. Ensure that you avoid anything that will negatively affect your health.
The day started with a hepatitis B awareness walk with the aim of sensitizing the public on the importance of taking this vaccination. Executive Secretary, Uganda National Students Association, Mugisa Rolecha, says awareness on infectious and non-infectious diseases would help students complete the school cycle.
We are calling upon the government and all well-wishers to see that they can come together and work together with the Uganda National Students Association so that we can vaccinate our students and prevent them from catching this disease. Prevention, they say, is better than cure. Calling upon government to look at the educational facilities, especially the public institutions that are on universal secondary education and universal primary education. We think that this was a very good idea. However, there is need for more effort.
The day has been celebrated under the theme Hepatitis B Awareness Walk and Camp. I'm Nafka Farida and Nalube Gashafiga reporting.
Always Be Tolerant organization has marked Nelson Mandela Day at an event officiated by the first Secretary South African High Commission Olela Nosukuga at Kololo Secondary School. Nelson Mandela Day is an annual international day set aside by the United Nations in honor of Nelson Mandela, the late South African president who died on 5th December 2013. Nelson Mandela is honored for his exemplary lifestyle as a freedom fighter, peacemaker, and ideal leader while he lived.
It's going to provide a good reading on Mandela. And the young ones, I encourage you to access the library and get.
Former South African President Nelson Mandela Madiba, who died 5 years ago, remains a darling to many people world over. It is for this reason that the United Nations has earmarked 18th day of July as the annual International Nelson Mandela Day.
I therefore commend a battle for this noble cause to promote peace and tolerance in Uganda.
The South African High Commission to Uganda, Olela Nosukuga, has joined students of Kololo Secondary School, Kampala, to mark a belated Nelson Mandela International Day, courtesy of Always Be Tolerant organization.
He was trying to reduce the tensions between black and white so that we all become the children of God and we don't look at each other in terms of religion or whatever.
Olela says Uganda supported the African liberation struggle in South Africa and in so doing occupied a special position in Mandela's life. He says it is for this reason that a monument is to be placed at Mandela National Stadium in honor of the great African, an iconic peacemaker.
The Mandela Day was declared by the United Nations resolution as the Mandela International Day. And that resolution has asked all individuals, communities, countries to celebrate the legacy of Mandela in a befitting manner.
The chairman, Always Be Tolerant organization, Musa Musana, organized the event and hailed Nelson Mandela for the spirit of tolerance, forgiveness and patriotism that he lived by during his active days.
He's ready again to die to defend the rights of those people who imprisoned him. So he is a rare individual whom we cannot erase in our minds, and therefore new things continue developing, continue coming up like this book now.
A professor, library science and information science, Makerere University, Dr. Abid Khan, hailed Kololo Secondary School for marking Nelson Mandela Day, a great African.
He was the prosperity of the whole world. He is as important to South Africans as he is to us here in Uganda or in any other country, in any continents of the world.
Nelson Mandela, who died at the age of 85 in Johannesburg in 2013, was the first black head of state from 1994 to 1999 and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election, focusing on dismantling the legacy of apartheid. Mutonyi Hilda and Deo Haimana, UBC.
Namaingo District Education Officer Kao Kawere has endorsed and adopted the concept of School Against Crime initiative, which aims at ending crime in society. Kawere made the remarks at Shifuyu Senior Secondary School, Namaingo, while addressing youth integrated development officials and patrons.
A new corrective initiative aimed at ensuring total discipline among learners has provided a solution to strikes, drug abuse and unwanted pregnancies in Namaingo district schools. Schools Against Crime officials and police have offered to students in 10 schools of Namaingo and Kayunga districts basic conflict resolution and micro-project skills. Namaingo District Education Officer Kao Kawere says schools have formed clubs to fight crime.
as we have these representatives now, they roll out what they have learned. Because if we reduce on the crime rate in this district, we know people will find a belonging. I have liked this thing called patriotism, because people think patriotism is a government slogan. But patriotism is a personal thing. If you know you belong to yourself, the way you control yourself, the way you want to be handled should be the way you should handle your other friends.
The Schools Against Crime project manager, Ronald Navimala, says maintaining discipline in schools creates a better learning environment.
They are moved by necessities within their lives that they lack. And because of that lack, which is not addressed, it might be a lack that is based on the background home, that maybe home there's no money and there's no, the financial base for the family to sustain this child at school is lacking, and therefore he's engaged in theft.
Students and patrons were taught on how to start small micro-projects like poultry keeping and saving credit schemes.
When you're in SAC, you get some other skills like financial skills, planning skills. You don't lag behind. You can begin a project or a business that will help you time to come when you're stuck in life.
Through the club, we have been able to initiate several programs in our schools, such as rearing of poultry.
Report compiled by Haruna Mtesasira for ABC News.
Now, members of Makerere University Academic Staff Association, MUASA, have threatened to resume their strike on the 23rd of this month if the University Council does not pay their incentives. During their general meeting at Makerere University, they said they will not give students final exams on the 27th of November this year.
Last year, President Museveni commissioned a visitation committee headed by the late Dr. Yoweri after lecturers went on strike that culminated into the closure of the university. For 5 months, the academic staff had been demanding unpaid incentives that government promised. They are now getting impatient over the delayed release of findings of the visitation committee on the causes of strikes, especially the viability of lecturers' demands. The lecturers' meeting with President Museveni yesterday over a daily report flopped after communication from State House that it could not take place.
And the staff are also in a sorry state because even the salaries that we say was enhanced has not come to the topmost. We're just halfway, and you can imagine what the trouble can be like.
Under their umbrella, Makerere University Academic Staff Association, MUASA, the Dons say they will continue with their demands.
Now I'm just wondering, these people are not allowed to graduate before they pay all their money. I never get even a single shilling of supervising those students, reading those reports and all those things. I mean, those people must pronounce themselves on that issue of allowances.
In a meeting convened at Makerere University, lecturers gave the University Council up to 23rd November to respond to their demands or they resume the strike.
So in the current circumstances, my view is we have exams coming in the next 2 weeks. We need a commitment letter from Council about these two issues. For me, my view would be, if we cannot have a letter communicating clear about this harmonization, and then also communicating to us about the incentive, then we should go with the exams. That's my proposal.
They also criticized the letter written by the Chairman Council to Public Service, saying it lacked commitment and ownership from the University Council.
It was found out, it was confirmed. Those are the clauses we expected this letter, not clauses like they claim. So doesn't he believe in the recommendations and the findings of the committee? When he's even part of it, we request that you take this message to him, that he writes appropriate English, that actually is befitting for a doctor. Thank you.
Dr. Muhammad Kigundu, the MUASA chairperson, says the university is not committed to their promise.
Council should again have a communication that is committal, that the findings that the committee did place at the table are owned by council, like they are owned by, or like they are accepted by MUASA, so that a letter that can go to public service will definitely reflect this out, because council has the obligation and the mandate to set what we call the salaries for the university. Because council is government, so they are working on behalf of government.
The academic staff still demand 60 billion shillings in salary enhancement, which government promised. Bernard Yiga, UBC, Makerere University.
Thank you, Bernard. Let's take a short break and return with business news. Don't go away if you may. Now in business news, Uganda's power distributor Umeme intends to spend about $1.5 billion in distribution over the next 10 years as the demand for power in the country increases. In their course to expand power distribution, Umeme has vowed to boost its sensitization drive to curb revenue losses through illegal power connection. In a media dialogue in Kampala, Umeme officials noted drastic decline in power losses from 38% in 2005 to 17.5% in 2017.
According to Celestino Babunji, the managing director Umeme, the reduction in power losses is as a result of continuous sensitization of the public against illegal power connections.
Electricity demand has increased to 7% this year compared to 4.4% of last year. And more specifically, electricity sales to the industrial customers is growing at 8% year on year. So for me, when I look at that and I look at the 5% and I look at my industries demanding for more power, then possibly it is an indicator that possibly there is increased manufacturing, possibly the manufacturers are seeing better prospects for the market of their goods.
The company loses about 100 billion shillings in electricity theft annually, with 10 billion shillings lost in Bale district alone, says Florence Subuga, the Chief Operations Officer Umeme.
Reduced losses from 38% to now about 17%. That represents a saving, as he indicated, of about 250 billion. As you may recall, he indicated that that saving impacts the revenues of the sector.
Umeme is banking on the near completion of power projects like the 600 megawatts Karuma Hydro Power Dam and the 180 megawatts Isimba Power Dam to expand its power grid and investment in the distribution network.
Let's be mindful that the government has injected almost $2 billion upstream in generation, right, plus transmission. Then also we have to invest downstream on distribution. So what will this investment be? You will see transformers, you see substations, you see lines being constructed, and you see customers connected to those lines.
Umeme's increased investments come at a time when only 22% of Uganda's population is connected to the national electricity grid. Charlotte Muge, UBC Business.
Public and private stakeholders in the tourism industry have committed to join forces in marketing Uganda's tourism diversity to the world. Minister for Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Professor Ephraim Kamuntu, notes that stakeholders' collaboration is critical in enhancing the visibility of Uganda's tourism sector locally and globally. This was at the 8th Annual Tourism Sector Review Conference in Kampala, themed Accelerating Tourism Growth to Attain Middle Income Status by 2020.
The tourism industry in Uganda has emerged as a source of growth and development. Minister for Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Professor Ephraim Kamuntu, says in just over a decade, the numbers of annual tourists have increased from 650,000 in 2007 to over 1.3 million in 2017.
Similarly, if you're going to move from 1.35 million people arriving in the country to 4 million by 2020, 2020 is not very far. You know, this is 2017. We are only beginning with about 2 years. So together with you guys, members of the press, we must do everything if you are going to become to make tourism a driving force.
However, tourism stakeholders argue that these numbers are still low considering Uganda's rich and diverse tourism potential. To entice tourists to visit Uganda, Professor Kamuntu urges the media to play a positive role.
So I appeal to members of the press, as you report, we avoid sensational reporting. You simply don't know how it impacts on so many globally, even when the incident is so small that is of insignificance security threat of the country. But the way you report it makes really a hell lot of a difference.
His sentiments are re-echoed by various stakeholders in attendance.
Tourism is about a story. What kind of stories do Ugandans share with the rest of the world? On social media?
Many Americans, what they know of Uganda is security, but they don't think they are safe to come to Uganda.
Tourism directly employs about 500,000 Ugandans. Indirectly, in terms of services to say lodges and places like that, is an extra 1 million jobs.
At global level, tourism and travel generated $7.6 trillion and created 292 million jobs in 2016. Dennis Igor for UBC News in Kampala.
Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe has made his first public appearance since the country's army took over on Wednesday. He attended a graduation ceremony in the capital, Harare. Mr. Mugabe walked slowly up a red carpet and joined the crowd in singing the national anthem, then opened the graduation ceremony at Zimbabwe's Open University, where he is Chancellor. One of the people he conferred a degree upon was Mary Chiwenga, the wife of the general who detained him on Wednesday, is according to the state broadcaster. Mr. Mugabe's attendance at the graduation is an annual tradition, but few expected to see him there. He had been under house arrest for days. The army made its move after a power struggle over his successor. Meanwhile, Christopher Musvangwa, the leader of the influential War Veterans Association, said Mr. Mugabe should step down at once. And Russia has vetoed a UN Security Council resolution that would have extended an international inquiry into chemical weapons attacks in Syria. Now, it is the 10th time Moscow has used its veto powers at the UN in support of its allies since the conflict began. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, accused Russia of undermining the organization's ability to deter future chemical attacks. The Russian ambassador dismissed the criticism. The Joint Investigative Mechanism was set up in 2015 to identify perpetrators of chemical attacks. It is the only official mission investigating the use of chemical weapons in Syria. Moscow strongly criticized the inquiry when it blamed the Syrian government for a deadly nerve agent attack on the town of Khan Shaykhun in April. Syria denies using banned chemical weapons. In the world of sports, the 6th edition of Bunyoro Kitara Masaza Cup has been launched, with 7 districts in the region expressing interest to take in on the competitive tournament. Now, the king of Bunyoro Kingdom, Omukama Dr. Solomon Gafabusa Iguru, launched the tournament aimed at advancing the glory and culture in the region.
The pursuit to improve sports development and culture in Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom, the King of Bunyoro, His Majesty Dr. Solomon Gafabusa Iguru and partners revealed the plan for the tournament and launched the event. MUK Uganda Limited, an oil and gas company, unveiled 100 million sponsorship as the company's corporate social responsibility. Amina Bukenya, MUK Public Relations Officer, adds that it's the company's willingness to sponsor sports and discover talent.
We believe that the energy and talent to be exhibited in this tournament will inspire even more young people to develop and grow their talent further, not just in Munyoro, but also take on national and international sports stages.
Among the districts that will participate in the football competition are Kagadi, Chibale, Kakumiro, Kiriandongo, Masindi, and Hoima. The tournament is slated for this month, and matches will be played in different district grounds in Bunyoro, and the final winning team will receive a cash prize and a bull, among others. For UBC, Helen Barbara, Jizamba.
Meanwhile, the patronage of the President of the Republic of Italy, Italians in Uganda will be celebrating their cultural and culinary week. Prior to Italian Cultural Week, the embassy has integrated the day with sports, where diplomats will converge to run a fundraising campaign in favor of children with disabilities at Kosu Hospital. The event is slated for 20th till the 25th of November this year. Italian ambassador to Uganda, His Excellency Domenica Fornara, will spearhead the run, and he says that it is the corporate social responsibility of Italians in Uganda to give back to the community as they celebrate their culture.
Like to merge the promotion of cultural events to events of solidarity. And this is why every time you organize cultural events or promotional events in general, we always try to dedicate some resources to the fundraising in favor of people in need. And this year we have decided to partner with Kosu Hospital in Entebbe in order to fundraise for a project in favor of children with disabilities that eventually were born, especially in the rural areas, and have very low means to receive treatments.
And over the course of the years, we have understood that healing and getting better is not just about medical intervention. There is so much more that we have to look at to make it happen. Yeah? So social integration, social life are part of the healing process. So we have come up now, it's actually in fact the fourth year that Corsu organizes a sport inclusive event. What does it mean? It means that through sport activities and games, children with disability and children, let's say, without disability, they play and compete together in a set of activities that of course we decide and we design so that everybody has access to it. And that integration, that level of competition, and of course all what comes with it, it's a positive message. It's a positive message for the children themselves, because it's a moment in which they experience each other in a dynamic environment through games, etc. But it also is a positive experience for those who are, attending or watching or participating less directly.
You've been watching News Tonight. Thank you for sticking with us. That's all for now. I'm Rhoda Ngonzi. Have a lovely night.